All right, I will call the meeting to order, Public Safety Building Committee meeting, Wednesday, October 10th. We are currently missing Mr. Goodney and Mr. Moorhead. And I know Mr. Wood will not be attending tonight, but we do have a quorum, so we are going to begin. First order of business is approval and release of executive session meeting minutes from August 6th of 2018. Those were included in the packet. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes as drafted by Mr. Barry, but also release them as well. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Officer. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And Ms. Cook abstained. All right, so 4-0-2. Next item is approval of meeting minutes from September 10th of 2018. Any comments for Mr. Lyons on these?
I had one. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but at one point, where you meant to say David Officer, you wrote John Officer.
Same family.
Seemed it's real close. Thank you.
I'll find that.
Any other comments, Mr. Lyons?
I've got, well written as always, John. Mine's just it's just a typo. Look at the very last sentence of item 10. Jason will bring I think you want handicap. Well, I'm not sure
What
are you trying to say there? Jason will bring the handicapped paving. What does that mean? So maybe it is right. I don't know what handicapped is.
Sounds like it sounds like the parking lot. What page you on, Kathy?
Look on, it is 10, item 10, the very last sentence. It's at the top of page 6. So I thought you were trying to say handicapped, but maybe you're not.
No, handicap.
Yeah, it's the handicap paving. So
Okay.
it's the change order related to
It's just,
the parking lot.
it's just a typo.
Yeah,
I guess-
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, substantively, it was,
All right, so we have
Very well done.
one typo correction in item 10, one name change. Any other proposed edits? Seeing none, I'll make a motion that we approve with those two minor modifications. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Barry. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Next item is, I believe, a few members of the committee. It didn't end up being a quorum, but I had a placeholder here in case a quorum was there to bring the questions back. Are there any questions from your visit to the site? I think Mr. Barry and Mr. Officer went.
We did, and I have no questions.
Mr. Barry?
I have no questions either.
Okay. Next item is chairman's update. So last Tuesday, I appeared before the board at their request for kind of a regular update. It had been about a month since I had updated them, so it was a pretty quick turnaround. I gave them a general update. The one item I left them with that I asked for some direction on, which was based on a construction meeting that I had attended with our series of consultants here, was there is a potential issue from a project timing perspective where the power line may have to transverse the area directly in front of the temporary golf clubhouse in terms of where they trench it. And once that starts, it would make it a unsafe work site for someone. If that line actually does have to go in that area, it would make it unsafe for the public or anyone to be in that general vicinity. So at the meeting I was at, I had asked CTA to come back with when's their absolute first start date and absolute last start date without jeopardizing kind of our July 1st move-in date of next year. What ended up happening in the interim is National Grid actually has to design that area, is how I understand it. So they have a lead time of 4 to 6 weeks. So we are looking at potentially the design in being able to release CTA to actually construct somewhere between November 1 and November 15th. Now, they could come back with a design that doesn't impede golf operations. If that's the case, then what I'm about to say has absolutely no merit, and I was just giving the board a heads up of something that they may have to decide on. If it does end up having to go through that area, they didn't take they didn't take a vote. They both all verbally stated unanimously that their first priority is not jeopardizing the July 1st move-in date. And I would guess that their main rationale there was that I told them our carrying costs per month are about $30,000 a month each for Vertex and Context, because both of their contracts expire and are budgeted based on a June 30th end date, essentially. So they were very unanimous in their decision that they would direct Mr. Purple to negotiate with the management company to make sure all the employees are made whole for any missed time if we had to close the course early. That is not happening yet, but that is the direction the board chose to go. I didn't think it was important to call a meeting for us before going to the board for that, because ultimately I don't think it's our say on what they do with golf course operations. I think it's our job to just bring the issue forward to them. So that's the direction the board decided to go from a golf perspective. Again, this may not be relevant, but we're talking about 15 days to 30 days in the month of November. We're not talking about 15 to 30 days in the month of July. So I know Mr. Purple has reached out already to Mr. Harrison from the Golf Management Company to kind of tee up the conversation, should it be necessary. Obviously, our hope is it's not necessary, but I don't think anyone wants to be trenching in the middle of December and chance snow and anything else, because we will certainly have a lot of additional costs, so.
As a brief update to that, Kevin will be meeting with National Grid on site on Friday.
So we should
So
know more.
face to face, hopefully they'll be able to say this side of the road or that side, and we'll have an answer.
Okay.
Which would be good.
Okay, so any questions on that?
So, just to be clear, so the impact of this is the golf shuts down a few days early, is what
Yep,
we're talking
15
about?
to
That's
30
it?
days early.
Okay. It normally should, I mean, I know a few people play in October, but I don't know of many people that play in November.
The contract goes through November 30th, is what Mr. Purple's informed me. I'll be very honest that in the same meeting, the golf community stated they wanted to stay open into December. I just don't see that happening without impacting all the fine work that's going on. So yeah, we're talking about 15 to 30 days in the month of November.
And why would this affect the July 1st date, even if golf won and said, no, you gotta push it back a few days?
So let's play out a scenario. Let's just say we honor golf's contract through November 30th. Let's just say the weather's good and CTA starts trenching based on the design that National Grid did on December 1st. They're behind schedule. So then they're delaying access of power
So
to
it
the
delays the
site
whole project, is what you're saying?
based on what they've told us. And
That's fine.
Is this for power to the site for construction purposes?
Yes.
it's overall building.
Yeah, permanent.
Okay.
Permanent, yeah.
The issue that we're having is that on the drawings, it indicates you have power. On the drawings, they indicate that you have power on one side of the driveway and communications on the other side. You cannot have the both of them on the same side of the driveway. We're meeting on Friday to hopefully get the right side that has the power going to the station moved over to the left side so we won't impede golf, but I can start trenching right away. If they say no, absolutely not, and they have to start trenching that way, then we'll have to have another conversation, because then I'm gonna be trenching up that side of the driveway, which will then cut off the Conex boxes and the golf course current trailer right now. So we're trying to accommodate everybody, but also make it easy for CTA to run his line where he's gotta go. And we'll find that out on Friday.
Mr. Rooney.
Is that a code requirement that it go both sides of the driveway, or is
Yeah.
that just a preference?
They're not allowed to be in the same area. So they've had it already designated, left side is communication, right side is electrical.
When you say not allowed, by code?
By code, yes. That's what I've been told by National Grid.
You get interference,
Okay.
because communication is usually lower voltage, and the higher voltage, you'll end up with interference in the lines.
All right, good on that topic. Next item, I'm actually going to yield to Mr. Lemieux. My understanding is there's somewhat of an update on the solar canopy RFP. Can you just outline when it was due?
Sure.
Where you're at and next steps?
Yeah, it's not great news. The solar canopy RFP was due yesterday. We received zero responses. So, we're going to go and take, we didn't have time, and I only learned that from Mr. Purple this morning. Didn't have time to go and kind of do a little fact finding and find out what, because was there something onerous in there? Was there something, or is it just that nobody wants to touch this because the cost of 300,000 worth of canopies can never be made up and make money off of the amount of solar? So that's just a guess, so I will find out and be able to update you. But what we should contemplate is, a plan B, maybe not right now, but start to think about if you want those canopies back straight up without solar. We know what that price was as an alternate. It was just over $300,000. And as you'll see in a second from the photographs, the site's moving along. So to the extent that we need to put some piers in for that, you'd want to do it this fall. We probably don't need to give them an answer this meeting, but I would say next meeting would be something we would want to contemplate. And by then I'll have some feedback I can share with you.
So I think it's important to note, I think you said 11 or 12
Yep,
firms pulled.
We had an initial burst.
Something doesn't,
Yeah, we had an initial burst of 7 or 8, and then the ad hit the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, and it had to run twice. We got another 3 or 4 and another couple. So it really,
so what I would ask is tomorrow, right, try to do your due diligence. And should that due diligence just show that people missed the deadline, et cetera, like repost right away so that we don't make a preemptive decision that isn't necessary. It doesn't, given the
Yeah.
benefits that are out there for this sort of work.
I don't disagree. I think there's something, and again, Grafton was the basis of Grafton.
Yeah, it was
It was Grafton. Grafton put one of these out, and we used that, town council, we used that as the basis. And obviously, the only details we really changed with it were the breakout of, I sent them the plans, all the stuff that Context had in the drawings about the canopies, what they were, the connections. So it was an electrical drawing, a structural drawing, a civil drawing. The only thing that wasn't shown was the canopies for the fireside, but I clouded that in and kind of drew it in with a box so it looked just like the other side. And we had no questions asked during the question period. So it's really, I don't know why this was, it could just be purely economical, and we'll find out. And to your point, Jason, if we can go back, I can throw an ad right back in Central Register tomorrow for the following week if there are some tweaks we need to make.
Would you
But
have to go 4 weeks again?
it's a 4-week because of the value of the property. When I questioned, it has to do with square footage. And when I questioned town council, I said, the reality is the only spot on the ground you're leasing are the foundation spots. I said, do we go with the foundation spots or do we go with the canopy? And if we go with the canopy, we exceed the 2,500 square feet. I think that's the number. So he said, just safe than sorry, instead of a 2-week procurement, it's a 4-week procurement. And it's got it has to be advertised in the paper twice. So it's purely driven by the square footage, and council said, you know what, just go with that one instead.
I mean, if push came to shove, at some point, we'd want to put the foundations in, or the piers, or whatever has to
Yep.
be done.
There's also trenching too.
Ah.
And not yet, but there'll be a point at which the yellow machines will disappear for a while.
Well,
And
the trenching's included, though.
Don't we own that in base
We
building?
own that.
You are correct.
Yeah,
You're right.
Yeah, I
You're
think
right.
what
You're right.
John's saying is
Pipes are
that
going in.
it's
You're
sort
right.
of just efficiency, work efficiency.
Right.
So once the
Understood.
machinery leaves the site,
Right.
we gotta pay them to come back.
And my point is, even if we end up paying to put the piers in, and then we eventually get someone to say, yeah, we'll put that in, and we'll just construct right on top of where you have the piers, at least that doesn't hold up.
That's a thought as well.
So I think you have your home, sorry, Mr. Do you have something?
My question related to the piers is that, can we at least build the skeleton, worst-case scenario, so that we could subsequently come in later and put the solar panels up?
You mean the structures themselves?
That's the $300,000.
The
That's the project.
That's you're not gonna get there's not gonna be you've got metal structure that is
Right.
beams or columns and a roof, and the solar goes on top of that.
Right.
The 300 is for all the steel.
Right.
And so a fully working canopy, adding the solar to it is kind of that's a second piece.
But as I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the solar canopy was a aggressive ask by one of the chiefs to have that, right?
I would say, I'd maybe rephrase it and say, originally, before we did, it was CD, right? Originally, we did CD, we had police and fire.
Right,
That number came back
right.
way higher than anyone at Pallet. Chief Morrow removed his canopy. Chief Paulus advocated to keep his in. Ultimately, this committee decided to do it as an ad alternate. We got a bid price, we rejected it because we thought that this is a viable. I still think it's viable based on everything I know about the incentives that are out there. Something smells to me like there was an admin glitch
I think the
here.
dividing line is just as what's been already suggested. If you want to do something to prep for the future, it's put the foundations in, get the base plates, ready for in the future, you can set columns on. I think that's where you stop it. I wouldn't go and buy steel. It's not worth it.
And how much would that cost?
That's what John was saying. That's the bulk of the 300,000.
That is
Oh,
300,000.
no, not
No, the
not
foundations.
Not the
Foundation.
foundation.
Oh, the foundations? No, sorry, the foundations would be cheaper. Although, this is editorializing here, but, seeing the change order prices we've seen so far from CTA, I'm not gonna say they're cheap to put the foundations in. We've had a lot of discussions about foundations in other parts of the project.
It wouldn't surprise, again, I'm totally pulling a number out of the sky.
Don't throw a number out.
Yeah, okay.
Don't throw a number
Okay.
out.
I'd just say I wouldn't,
Thank
it's
you.
not cheap, but it should not be as expensive as we would have
It's not
paid
300,000,
No.
the steel.
It's five
It's
figures.
but it's also not
It's much
100,000.
less than that,
yeah.
much less than that.
But we're also over in the area of all the ledge that we found on site, aren't we?
We are, the area where the police
Where we're
cruisers
talking-
are, there is some ledge there. It wouldn't be a bad idea to get, I'm gonna show you a picture here, but they have GPS devices that, you won't be able to tell what this is, but this is the evidence to say that they have GPS devices that have given us a profile of the top of the ledge. So we can ask them to compare that with where we would need the piers to go and tell us if they need to do more ledge excavation. And if that's the case, that's something else you may want to consider doing now while they have the equipment on site to do it. Because that's true. I mean, if you have to come back after the asphalt's in to place a pier, dig a hole, and now you find out there's ledge there, that you're gonna
your
you're
asphalt
gonna
with
ruin
the tracks
everything,
in the machine.
just to get it done. So that and the foundation work are worth considering now, and I would suggest that we ask CTA to use that GPS information to find out if there's ledge that has to be removed. That's a good point.
So
We'll do that
this week, you'll kind of,
tomorrow.
yeah,
It has-
perfect.
It has to be,
And then,
to get the ad
and
out again.
then,
if we're gonna
obviously,
do that.
I think you see where the committee's going, then we should either go back out to bid or start drawing up interim change orders. Because I think one of the things we'll get to shortly is we'll probably have an interim meeting, so we could approve that if needed.
Okay.
Just to keep this moving before
Sure.
winter.
Sure.
Next item is beam signing and topping off. So my understanding is there were quite a few people that stopped by to sign the beam. I didn't physically see what it looked like at the end, but I heard there was quite a decent showing. So thanks to all that did that. This Friday, well, some think the weather forecast is going to be bad. Every weather forecast I've seen has been, said tomorrow is the bad day. So the plan is still that at 7:30 on Friday, they will do the topping off ceremony. Be very brief. We'll be out of there no later than 8. So I think to the extent the committee can come, that's great. It's really more of a kind of the last, I'll call it, ceremony before any sort of ribbon cutting. Interior design mock-up review logistics. So this is just a heads up that we will likely be asked to review an interior design, much like we did the exterior at the last meeting. I'm not sure it can wait until our November meeting, but it was clearly not ready for tonight. so that's why it's kind of up in the chairman's update. What I wanted to do is understand what the, if the committee wants to proceed. Last time we had a pretty educated dialogue, but landed back with where our consultants had told us. I'm trying to measure the temperature of how much say you want in, and maybe Ellen or Jeff can just articulate exactly what they're gonna be signing off, paint color.
We're gonna give you a board, 24 by 36 with little tiny pieces of each color that we're gonna wanna pick for everything that has color, well, almost all the things that have color on the project. The flooring, all the different flooring types, paint colors, trim, ceiling, everything. And so it's a lot of use your imagination because they're very small pieces. You have to imagine what this little piece of flooring is gonna look like horizontal on a big floor versus the paint color. And so there are interpretation of what works well together. And we'll first review it with the chiefs. So we'll be coming to you with something that they've already agreed with, which I think is the first step. But then we're gonna need a sign off from you guys saying everything's looks fine to you. So it's much more difficult than the exterior colors because it's more abstract and it's for the entire building. So we're gonna do fire spaces as well as police spaces, which may have different color schemes. And so there's gonna be a lot there. And so in the past, what's happened to us in the past is usually that the final decisions are sort of turned over to the chiefs as to what they want in their spaces. And then sometimes the building committee cares a little bit more about the public's parts of the building, but it's totally up to you. It's whatever you wanna do.
So that's what I'm looking to measure from this group now. My personal opinion is I am not a interior designer, so I'm not sure I'm gonna add any value to the discussion, but I'm only one of 9, so I'm just looking to see what everyone wants presented to them, how much say you want in it, so that then we can decide exactly the logistics we're gonna do so that we don't impede their progress. Mr. Rooney?
So I've been told on many occasions by my wife that I too am not an interior designer, so I would leave it up to you and the chiefs, and I'd be fine with whatever decisions you make.
I do like to look, but, last time, we, for the most part, liked what you showed us, but you really need to give us much time. It's basically, here it is, and we really would like you to decide tonight.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to have a little time to really think about it before we vote on it, but I agree. It's one of those things, as long as you don't go, ooh, I want to see what you recommend, maybe what Mike thinks are good colors and what the chiefs want too. So I don't think we're gonna sit here and go, oh, no, I think I want the eggshell on this one and whatever. That makes no sense for 9 people who do that without much expertise in it. So I think we'll know if something just is glaring, which we're probably not gonna see. You're gonna show us something that makes sense. But I would like to have a little time this time to think about it and not have to vote as soon as we see it.
Yeah, I'd like to see the samples. I think we should definitely take a good look at those, but I think that the chiefs should definitely have more say in what the interior is gonna look like. They're the ones who are gonna ultimately be living and working in the building, so I think that they should have most of the say.
One of them.
Living.
Only one of them.
Well, eventually, there'll be 2 chiefs in there.
Well, but
May change.
but I'm
Yeah.
assuming
There'll
they're,
be 2 chiefs.
right, sure.
There will hopefully be a decision before we have, yeah.
For my vote, I'd like to see everything. I mean, I don't think I'm gonna sit here and say, ooh, I like ecru and not linen. I don't know, I'm not gonna be talking about shades of off-white, but I would like to see things.
You'd be surprised what we get into. You'd be surprised what you're capable of.
I think if you want to be expeditious about it, you do the presentation board of what you've selected already, because we're just talking about colors as well.
That's
We're not
right.
talking about a change of material type or something.
Correct.
So we're talking about colors, and all these things on the board are gonna have other color options. So if you even wanna get the other options for all the pieces, to early say, here's your board, here's what you're looking at, and here's everything else that you could put in there.
So I would suggest, if you want to do something like that, we're going to need another meeting. Because, as you said, my goal would be to present it once to you and say, do you like it? Yes, no, we're done. So if you want to be involved in something ahead of time, I would suggest either we have another meeting ahead of time to give you the chance to look at it and have that type of discussion where we bring the box of all the rejects. And if you don't like what's on the board, we go through the box and
Go through
find other options for you. That would give us the opportunity to have more of a working meeting and discussion about it. And I'd suggest that happens prior to the next committee meeting. So the schedule would look something like, we design a board, review it with the chiefs, get their basic buy-in, then have a meeting with a subset of you folks that are interested, working meeting, work through it, come up with an option, and then bring it to the November full committee meeting. And I think that timeframe will work fine with CTA. We're not asking for anything drastic here. These are all interior finishes, so there's nothing special that has a super long lead time. So I think they can wait till the middle of November to get a final decision. But I think we'd need that time to work through the process.
That sounds very reasonable. That way, if you're really interested, you can go to the working meeting. If not, you just come to the
That's
final
right.
meeting and say yes or no.
Okay.
And I'd also, is there anything special that we're doing anywhere in the public spaces or within the bays of the apparatus
Chief,
that
the
are?
police chief's working
very
on a
visible?
lot of special things. He's got them cooking. He sends me emails all the time, but so far,
Gold-plated poles?
Keep
or
them out of
something?
other people's stations, right?
well, there's really not, it's pretty basic stuff. There's
Neutrals.
nothing that we're suggesting that's gonna be crazy. I mean, there's no inlays of, the department seals on the floor of the tile in the building, which we've done in other buildings before. There's no decals on the walls. We're getting custom made or anything like that. So it's just paint, mainly,
Yeah.
types of carpet, that sort of thing.
All right, so you'll let me know when you're ready to do that?
Yep.
You're not gonna get much choice in terms of date, so those that,
I would assume it's
One
an
half.
evening meeting that folks that want to attend this will be evening. Okay, we'll plan for that.
and just, I'll post, but just measuring the temperature at this table, we are like split on who wants to show up and who's not, so I can totally see not having a quorum, so just to the extent we don't have a quorum, just be mindful of discussion at that particular meeting, so. Golf course operations logistics, I think I already covered that with my selectmen's update. Kevin, did you want to introduce Bill quickly before we move on?
Thank you. Everybody, as you know, from the beginning of the project, we were going to change out the clerks on the job, so this week was Paul Louis' last day. So we brought Bill Nagel over, who, Bill and I have worked together for the last couple of years, doing the Randolph Fire Station and Police Station, as well as just closing out the Westford Main Headquarter Fire Station project. So Bill is very capable of doing the clerk job. He's very good at interaction with the community, with the committee members, as well as the town manager. He's already met in the chiefs. We've done a walkthrough around with everybody, so I look forward to working with Bill again. And if anybody has any questions for him, feel free to ask right now, or you could come out to the job site and he'll take you around the job. But this is Bill Nagel.
Welcome, Bill.
Nagel, I have a New York accent.
How long have you been working with him?
Long time.
All right, owner's project manager monthly project update.
Great.
You're on, John.
Thank you. So we'll start with the pictures, photo update. This, if you recall, was the picture from a month ago on September 10th. And you will see that now we've got a whole lot more on site. The other pictures will show a little bit more. On the previous picture, the foundation wall hadn't been completed. That is now completed. Obviously, steel has started all around the site. You've got towards the back of the picture, you can see where masonry has started, kind of right in the center of the picture, as well as the apparatus bay door openings on the upper right-hand corner. Show you a little bit more of those in a second. This picture here is important because the ledge pile that was there is no longer there. And this is the start of the access road that kind of wraps around the back of the site to the newly relocated clubhouse. Here's, as we're kind of driving down the road on the left, you've got the completed high retaining wall. On the right middle of the picture, you see the lower retaining, oh, there's another picture of the upper, sorry. There's the lower retaining wall as we kind of work our way over to the clubhouse. Steel, as I said, so to orient you, Route 85 is kind of on the right side of the picture, and this is the front, if you're standing on 85, this is the front left corner, so this is police area we're looking at here. 2 stories, you can see the elevator tower installed, the block in the center of the photo. Here's your main entry, with the arch over the front door. This is the back of the police side of the building. Kind of, if you were in the front and we walked around the front, the whole left side and then towards the back, this is a view of that area. You can see the high retaining wall to the right and the school obviously in the back of the picture. This will give you an idea of just the size of the 5 bay doors that are being installed right now, the CMU block. Another view from the opposite corner.
So that grade is going to go up quite a bit in front of the doors there?
Yeah, yes. This is a view from the rear of the apparatus bay. Obviously, the back side isn't constructed yet. They're using, you see the dirt mounded up here to ramp over the foundation wall so they don't damage it. But they've started in the front, and they've got 2 sides, and they're working their way around. It's an overall view from the rear, the crane setting steel. This is the current status of the septic field, which was activated yesterday. It passed its test, so it is now on and working. So backfill, I guess, will be coming sometime
Yes,
in the next couple of weeks.
very shortly, yes.
So, any questions?
When you say, but it won't be, will it be seeded and everything this year or not?
If they get it covered, I would imagine they will put something down just for sedimentation, erosion control. Maybe a fast-growing
Or they put hay down. or
grass, or
something.
they'll just hay it and then deal with it next spring. It's, it'd be great if it were down now, but in the next 2 or 3 weeks, that window of growth is starting to close as the night gets really cold, and then everything just goes dormant. So again, a couple weeks ago, and now, so we're moving along.
Can you go back to that other picture?
Sure.
So that upper left or left-hand side, that's the septic?
That's right.
Yeah, that kind of, it looks like all crushed stone, just to the right of the clubhouse. Yeah, you can't see it in the next picture. So it really not much has changed there, or nothing has changed really in a month. Really what's happened is the connection and getting all the wiring squared away so that it could be activated.
So that's all done. It's ready to be switched over.
It's on.
It's done.
It went on yesterday.
It's
It
done.
passed
It's
its
switched.
test. It passed its test, and they turned it on yesterday. So the sewage is flowing.
From Woodward.
Yes, from the tank into the septic field. But for these prior few weeks, they had been, since school started, they had been
Going into the tank,
periodically
and they just kept pumping the tank.
out of the tank,
Okay.
yeah. Yep,
All right, so now it's fully functional as far as Woodward goes.
correct,
Great.
correct?
That's somewhat of a
Well,
milestone.
I don't know how much detail you want to get into, but there's a little bit of a hang-up. It's working. So don't get panicked about that. But we learned that there's an investigation going on because the existing pumps in the existing Woodward tank system are not working the way that design intended for them to work, the original design. So it's not
Original
able to
design
push the flow.
meaning
The original
when-
Woodward school
20 years
design.
ago.
Okay.
So we think there's, could be a combination of different things, and it's being investigated by the site contractor to figure out what the issue is. It could be that parts need to be replaced, like there's a bad float in the system. But right now, what's happening is that they're not getting enough flow out to the septic system until both pumps are operational, and that's not supposed to be happening. They're supposed to get enough flow with just one pump operating.
Redundancy.
So there's either a problem with the original construction of those pumps, they undersized them and nobody caught it, and now we're paying the price for that, or there's a problem that just needs to get fixed in the existing pump chamber. So Paul Pazinski let the system pass and let it be operational with the caveat that the site contractor has to ferret this out, figure out what's wrong, and make sure it gets repaired. So the possibility exists. We haven't ruled it out yet, but the possibility exists that in the worst case, the pumps might have to be replaced if they're not capable of maintaining the right flow. Potentially, it depends on the horsepower and then the characteristics of each pump, but we don't know all the answers yet, and then so I don't want to say it's a done deal and close the book on it, because we might be back before you in a month saying we've got some extra costs.
How long ago was those pumps installed, ballpark?
Well, for Woodbridge School, I can't remember,
15, 20,
2000, what,
something.
what do you think?
I don't remember the date.
15 to
But
20 years ago.
It's a while. It's a lot, it's a
And-
long.
and it's
Why
not-
would- And so you think they,
It's possible that the original design called for a certain characteristic on the pump, and then a change was made during construction and never updated on the documentation that our engineers were using to base the new system design.
No recourse?
At this point, no.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it is what it is, and we don't know that's the case.
It might
I
just
mean,
be
it could
broken.
just be a float that's in the pump right now that just needs to be replaced, and that may be it may be a simple fix. So I don't wanna make it into a bigger thing than it might be.
And it's something we'd have to talk about with the school in terms of
That's
where
right.
that expense.
That's right.
Because where is the tank?
It's in the
It's in between.
school property side, kind of outside the area of the turnaround circle
On,
on their side of the property. It's like kind of where the fire truck is, taking that picture, on the other side of the fence line.
on your side, right? And eventually, public safety's tying into that tank and going back out to the field. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah.
Right, so that tank is, we didn't get a new tank with our building.
That's right.
We're going into this
We're
tank and
going in
back
there
out.
and then, yeah.
And it's not because that's not hooked up yet, or that,
Well, that's all
Connections.
done.
it's
And we-
done, but
It's all
the
done,
pump,
and we
that's
have,
not.
Nothing.
actually, I should clarify, we're not going into that tank. We have a different tank on our side that has pumps in it that will take care of the public safety. So everything's done,
Okay.
apart from this one issue on the Woodward School side. They're just sorting through this pump issue.
Okay.
Once the public safety goes online, they just have to hook the sewer pipe from the building to our tank, which sits next to our building on the
Is our
public
tank in?
safety side. It's in, because it
Okay.
actually flows through that system to get out to the septic field. So that has to be installed anyways, so it's just a matter of connecting the public safety building to the new tank. There's a pump there, so
So Woodward,
they pump it into us,
Goes to
and then
our
we
tank.
pump it into the field.
correct, okay. So
So
they
to-
did all
in
get,
order and that's
they
all
all got
done, because in
connected.
order to get their stuff to the field, we need both sets of systems working.
Okay, I'm gonna move us on from the septic.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. So next item is completion date for phase one. So, if you recall at last meeting, I raised the point that we were well past the phase one completion date. I think the committee was, well, we didn't take a vote, pretty unanimous in like trying to get that solidified in writing, but also get the phase two part solidified in writing. Our team here went back to CTA the next morning, had a construction progress meeting, and received assurances on that date that phase one was going to be done by the end of September. And we'll get back to defining what phase one is, because I think that's pretty important, as I've learned in these discussions. And that there was no impact to phase two, which is obviously move-in date for public safety. A week later, about a 3-ish page letter of all the concerns of CTA was issued. I don't know if it went to Kevin or to Context, but basically asking until, I'll call it roughly Thanksgiving, to finish phase one. Again, I'll come back to the definition of phase one. And asking for approximately 3 weeks on the July 1 date. You can all imagine what the reaction was. The reason there was no committee meeting called was because Context, in my opinion, adequately handled some of their claims, right? Because they're the ones having the day-to-day of how quickly did they reply to certain RFIs, should it cause a delay, should it not? In general, what the letter said on phase, basically on all their claims is no. Is basically, and we're sticking to kind of the schedule. So we have not kind of agreed to a date on phase one, and we are still under the operation that July 1 is kind of the date that we're gonna be moving into the facility, based on their response. What I'll say is, in terms of the definition of phase one, I think the general understanding now is that phase one is really the turning on of the septic field, not necessarily the certificate of occupancy for the golf clubhouse. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
So-
And the parking lot and driveway.
In the parking lot driveway. So we heard about septic. That's almost there, absent the float, hopefully, and not
That
something
might
more.
not be their issue.
Right, right, and that seems reasonable.
Why wouldn't the certification from Paul be the completion of the septic?
I think,
Mike, John?
I mean, I think it is.
Yeah.
Frankly,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can accept that because Paul's accepted it.
Sure.
Right. It's clearly not delaying public safety in terms of phase
and
two.
and I would
there's-
accept that. I don't
yeah.
have any problem with saying you're off the hook for the septic system and for so the last piece is the driveway and parking lot. We're waiting for them to finish that, put the gravel on and make it done so that it can be used by the town. But that's what we've drawn the line at those items and then said everything relating to fitting out the golf clubhouse does not necessarily have to be complete by phase one, and that could be done later on during phase two.
Right, and so from a public safety perspective, my only concern with any of this would be impact on phase two. We can clearly see what's going on phase two at this point. Like, and none of this stuff is in the way of phase two, which is why I was kind of shocked by their request for 3 weeks on phase two. It just didn't hold with everything, obviously, that this team has been asking them on a weekly basis at the construction meetings. So my understanding is CTA is going to come back with a response to whatever letter. I guess what I would ask of you to kind of, in representatives of your firm, is no matter what if it says something that we don't agree with, I would say that, you all are professionals, you need to get in the room, right, with maybe some representation from the town to just hash this out. We can't be going back and forth with one letter every 2 weeks. I think they made their point, you made your point,
Totally agree.
right? It's time to show up at the table and just figure out.
Yep.
And I guess what I would bring back to this committee is if as a result of any of that, they don't think July 1 is feasible, which I really don't see any reason that wouldn't be, where we end up, that, we'll come back together and decide as a committee how we should move forward.
I think my take on things was that phase one was what CTA was most anxious about because they felt like we were requiring them to have the clubhouse fully occupiable by the end of phase one, and they were admittedly afraid that we were going to start assessing liquidated damages for not completing the phase one task on the due date. And I think our response, while, as you, I think, adequately summarized it, said no to a bunch of things, we did say yes to extending the deadline of phase one and sort of giving them an out there. And so by doing that, I'm hopeful that, once they write this response and we have an in-person meeting, we can come to some mutual agreement that here we are, October 10th, looking forward, 7 months or whatever it is to completion date. You've got to have enough time to have made up whatever delay that's there. We can't possibly sit here and say all these tiny little things added up to 3 weeks worth of delay. So I'm hopeful that we can come to some agreement that keeps that original date.
And I guess what I've asked Mark to do is just kind of facilitate a lot of the golf conversations, given that it's not part of our charge, and as long as it's not coming out of our budget, I don't see any reason for those items to be coming forward. The only thing I've asked is to make sure that golf does have a new home come the spring, because I think that will create issues for our project if some of this stuff continues to linger.
And that's the intention, is that, the golf's issues are wrapped up, they have a plan, and there's a completion date on the books for prior to when golf intends to start, March next year.
Mr. Rooney?
So, do these negotiations parallel other types of negotiations? They asked for 3 weeks, you said no, they come back with a week and a half. Is that the way that we expect them to go? And my second question is it a lack of manpower that requires them to push it out 3 weeks?
You want to answer that? I have so many ways to answer that
There's
question.
a lot of ways to answer that. I mean, this picture's a great example. There was a giant pile of ledge there. Nobody knew about it. You can't tell me the ledge didn't slow you down in some way, shape, or form. The detail is, did the ledge slow you down from building the building? Did moving the golf clubhouse because of some of the changes, well, the golf clubhouse stood near the footprint of the building. So, but you could have just picked it up and left it somewhere and moved it out of the way. So to sit here and give you I can't sit here and give you answers to the argument that hasn't taken place yet. You know, they gave us a letter. Jeff did a good job of answering it. They may come back. There may be a negotiation for something.
Right,
You know, at the end of the day, we want to keep the long
sure,
goal in mind.
sure.
And what we don't want to do, to Jason's point, is let it fester, because then we end up with this reservation of rights on a claim that continues to grow.
Right.
And it's a snowball, and it adds more days, and by the end of the job, we've got 70 days we're talking about at, you know, at $30,000 a month for general conditions for them, you know, and then we're fighting with LDs. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that, you know, did anything that this site have impact them? Right now, we think the answer is no. But if they disagree, we'll sit in a room and we'll get it figured out, because that's.
And Jeff, have you had experience with this particular contractor on this particular type of issue before?
Oh, yeah,
You have?
oh, yeah.
So if we,
Okay.
They have too. It's pretty regular occurrence in construction, so, with all contractors, but.
So I'm surprised, Jason, you said what you said a minute ago. I would think this is a really regular occurrence. And, I mean, I've been involved in a whole lot of construction projects in the last few years, not on the commercial side, on the high-end residential side, and they never come close to being finished on time. Now, there's no liquidated damages, there's no promises, there's a schedule.
Right,
So there's no
and that's the key.
financial impact to the contractor of being late.
That is the highest and greatest issue facing the contractors.
So-
We put a sword over their head.
So we do have a sword in this contract.
Yes,
Correct.
yes,
And it's
Correct.
July 1st?
for phase two.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Phase
They
one
actually
was
have two.
August
They have one for
15th.
phase one and one for phase two, and both of them are hanging over their head right now because we have not taken them away. We sort of put it out there that we're willing to take the phase one damages away, but it hasn't been resolved yet. So that negotiation we're gonna have, we have that leverage over them, and so we can use that in a bunch of different ways. And again, like John said, the goal is to come to some mutually satisfactory way where we can still get what the town needs without overly penalizing the contractor.
Because the reality is your liquidated damages are there to cover your costs. They're not, if they're punitive, that doesn't work. They need to be legit. Well, it's legit, because if Bill has to be here an extra week, and if Alan and Jeff have to make an extra visit, you want to make sure that that daily charge covers you for that cost. And that's-
Including their cost, including the general conditions cost, the whole thing.
No. Liquidated damages,
To pay these.
it's to pay,
Yeah,
you
it-
pay your costs.
In that sort of
And they-
scenario.
But if
They
we,
sometimes come
but
out,
if his
though.
general conditions is also going to be extended beyond July
If
1st.
he, and that
And you can
comes
have that.
down to whose fault is it?
Whose fault?
And
Yeah.
that's part of this discussion. Because also in this discussion, if you recall, they were late with their steel shop drawings, okay? Guess what's behind right now? Steel. A little bit, not a lot, but a little. So are all these other things, you know, even if they're all true, we've got a concurrent delay in my mind of the steel isn't where it should be.
It's
So
not
that's,
being delivered, or is?
oh, no, it's there, and
there.
it's being installed,
So
and
it's
the
a
rest of it,
manpower
it's
issue.
all laid out.
Yeah.
Well, it's when it got here. You
Yeah.
know, they've got manpower doing it, the crane's there, they're doing what they're supposed to right now.
So
But it's
there's-
a question of when it got here. Well, whose issue is that?
There's hundreds of little occurrences that have happened in the last 3-4 months that may have all conspired in a way to put CTA in this position that they're in. And the problem is, do we sit in a room and we negotiate every tiny little detail? Well, when did you send me this amount? How many days should have taken you to review it, and blah, blah, blah? Or do we get to the big picture, get through some of the muck and say, what's the real, injury to which party? And do we think there's a way to get this building built where we're standing here today by the end date that doesn't,
And the reality too is even if the job were to go a week or two long, will we have costs? If we do well with our budget, doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be looking for extra
Yeah,
cost.
so I'm not, I
Yeah, we
mean,
should-
we've got police and firefighters working
I
in
agree.
facilities that we don't want them working in anymore.
I agree. No, all I'm saying is there's a way to frame the discussion and.
Yeah,
and have
so
it. Well,
I
if
think you guys need to have some sense of urgency
as soon as-
around this.
soon as
Well, I
we
think
can-
you need to get them to reply, right? Don't give them another 2 weeks, right? And then the second that letter comes in, if it's
well,
not,
there's a contractual mechanism that comes into play. We've responded to their initial request, and they
Mhm.
have some time to get back to us, and as soon as that expires, there'll be a letter
What is
written.
that?
I can't remember the number of days. There's a certain number of days in the contract that they have, and then we'll, if they don't say anything, we'll issue something telling them that that's expired. But frankly, I think that's really not the best way to approach it. I'd take
No.
it's a regular recurring meeting item on our weekly meeting, so we will discuss it again.
I mean, I've shared this with you before. I would just say, my issue is you all did exactly what this committee asked you after the last meeting. They affirmed what we all expected verbally to you the next day. It was recorded in your construction meeting minutes, and then a week later, right, that to me is just a catastrophic communication issue of that, like, they whip you on the back with a written letter, but they can't say it to your face, right?
So the first meeting, the face-to-face, they said no problem with dates, and then a week later you get a letter saying
Been
we need,
consistently
3 weeks?
asking,
Yeah.
and they've consistently said the schedule is moving everything's moving according to schedule. We don't have any delays. So, yes, what Jason
But we
said
don't
is
know what
true.
happened
We're
between
very
the-
surprised we got the letter. I mean, it was a long letter. They listed lots of reasons why they think they're entitled to it, and we responded to them all. So I think it's just up to us to sit down with them and figure out the way forward. You know, certain contractors, CTA included, can be a little intensive with their documentation of issues, I'm gonna say, just so they can kind of make a claim if they need to. And that's one of the issues we face, is that, you know,
but
they're
the
building
reasons
their
they
plan.
gave the long letter, with the reasons were all one-sided, it's something we did?
Oh, yeah, no, they're not gonna, yeah, they're definitely gonna accuse us of everything.
Their fault.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean,
There's
it's
never a
us,
mea
it's
culpa.
Vertex, it's whatever has been done to them to put them in this position, so.
So they took
But-
the discussion at the meeting, they brought it back to their office, they had a conversation with someone or some group of people which generated this letter.
Well, the reality is, we've been asking them to produce a schedule
Yeah.
for several weeks, and they hadn't yet produced it. And they needed to do it to close out the month, to give us their application for payment. It's a requirement to provide an updated project schedule. And so, once they actually completed their schedule, I'm sure they saw in their schedule, gee, we're 3 weeks late. We gotta write a letter and tell them why we're 3 weeks late and why it's not our fault.
All right, so you have your marching orders?
We're good.
Can I just ask
Uh,
one quick question? It'll be quick.
Right.
We put the phase 1 and phase 2 in. Why did we put phase 1 in?
Because of
did-
the school, to get the septic system
To get
functional
the
for the
septic
school.
functional, right?
Yeah.
Which school started a month and a half ago and
And we
septic
tied
just
it
got
in with-
on,
We
so.
tied it in with golf, because at that time, we didn't really know what was gonna happen with them, but we wanted that stuff sort of, it seemed logical to cut that stuff off at the same time frame.
Is there any,
But it was based on
um,
the school.
there's any retainage tied to phase 1 that they get? All that retainage of phase 1 or something, or
No
is there anything
retainage.
else
No,
involved?
retainage would be
Release.
on the
It's
entire
just hitting a date.
project.
It's just
so
hitting a
it'd be
date, right?
Way to the end,
Which
yeah.
was far off before school started anyway, so.
Yeah. And
I think we put phase 1 to bed and to have them explain, or have them catch up on 3 weeks over the next 7, 8 months, so, sorry.
Proposed change order. So, there was an initial letter, when I sent her in the original packet, then I received a revised listing yesterday. Given the nature of the revisions, I thought it was important to get those approved, tonight, have a discussion while we had everyone together. So, really what I'm looking at is the context letter, dated October 9th. I'm gonna go one by one. Most of these are gonna be public safety, so what we'll do, similar to last time, we'll just get a brief explanation on what it is. Obviously, if it's in the letter, context and Vertex have already signed off on it, thinking it's valid. Generate discussion, and then we'll move all of them at the end, assuming no one wants to hold any off to the side for a different vote. So the first one is PCO 04R1, which is guardrails and curbing. I've confirmed that this would be under public safety, not the school.
So this one actually, as you can see by the number, has been there for a while. It's very early on. One of the first things the site contractor noted is that the drawings didn't show specifically that, even though we showed the connection being made and, you know, the road coming through, and obviously the guardrail would have to be removed and the curbing would have to, we didn't tell them to specifically do it. So, of course, we made the same face when they said that. So, you know, we negotiated this back and forth and back and forth. The drawing showed a connection made between the school And there's a guardrail that,
I
get
that, but
they did not specifically explicitly say the guardrail needs to be removed and the curbing that was there needs to be removed. Even though we did a demo plan that showed things coming out, we didn't specifically say those things had to come out. So they felt they were entitled to those added costs because they weren't specific. So we disagreed for a while and then eventually came to some compromise where we're not paying for the curbing, but we're paying to remove the guardrail because there's extra work. So this is only for the cost of removal of the guardrail.
Any questions on this one?
What's the total?
$1,300.
Yeah. PCO 29 water line size revision, which is a savings of $4,967.15. This would be public safety.
So this was a benefit from the town changing the water pipe size that was planned on, very early on, we heard 10 inches was going to be the plan, and it became 8 inches in the final design for the street. So we were able to revise the piping on our side of the project site to match that diameter. There's no reason to build a 10-inch pipe. So this is the cost savings from materials mostly.
Any questions on that one? PCO 32, which is a plumbing fixture, $11,807.60.
So this was for the apparatus bay in the fire station area for hose reels. They're very large pull-down hose reels that provide water, not garden hose style, but like 1.25 inch hose fills for trucks. And we showed them on the drawings, but we didn't have a specification for the specific model of hose reel we wanted. And so, you know, they gave us a change order for all new hose reels, as if we didn't even have them in the project. So the negotiation was, since we showed them, we at least own a basic generic hose reel. So we got a credit for that and the man hours associated with installing something like that. And this was just for the increase to go for these larger specific hose reels that we were looking for, which, so that adds, it does add up, but they're very large, they're like 3-foot diameter.
The next project that you guys are involved in?
The lessons are continuous, yes. Yes.
Full practice, right?
Is there
I
any
told
questions?
my staff, if you don't actually draw anything and just write large 24 by 36 with notes on it, you could probably buy more. You could get the project done better in public construction than if you drew any lines on the page.
Any questions on that one? PCO 38. So I'm not sure whether we own this one.
I know the answer to the time question now.
All right, so just for the committee's benefit, there was a PCO earlier in the project for roughly $8,000+ for all the temporary facilities the golf clubhouse is using now, plus all their storage.
Right.
That expired
Expired the end of September.
the end of September. So what this is asking us to do is to extend it for October and November. My reservation about this one would be, if you go back to my conversation with the Board of Selectmen, like what if golf does shut down on November 1st? Why are we paying for it? But at the same point, we already are almost 15 days into the month of October, and they're still open and operating. I guess from a who owns this, I haven't gotten a clear answer, and I'm not looking at either you two, and Mark has since left. The committee never approved the original temporary storage because it's currently parked under the golf article, which we have no charge over. So my view is nothing from the public safety aspect of this project has caused the need for 2 more months of storage. It was because they flipped the clubhouse, right? And that caused all of these inherent delays with all the other things that you haven't spent time with us on because you don't need to. So my view is either both of those PCOs belong to us or none of those PCOs belong to us. So in the interest of getting this approved, I guess my question to you guys is, what if golf shuts down November 1st? Can we get half of this back?
Jason, half of what back? This is a credit. What's the other PCO?
No, I'm on 38.
We're on
Cat
38 now.
It's about $1,500 per month. So I guess the answer would
The
be it
detail,
depends.
The letter.
Okay, keep going.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
They'd have to have them pulled out.
PCO 38 is for October and
Yeah.
November.
That's what Jeff's saying, yeah.
So, there's a couple of issues. One is I don't think it's reasonable to expect they can pull out of all these things overnight.
Yep.
And so there's gonna be some loss of use at the end of the month of October so that they're out completely by November
Okay.
1st. I think there's also a notice that you probably have to give to the company saying, we're not gonna lease for the next month, and I don't know when you have to give that notice. I don't know if it's like the middle of the month or they need 4 days' notice. I don't know what it is. And the other sort of practical things are, there's a bunch of electrical for the cart chargers in the storage, and that's gonna take some time to disassemble, and then we need to move that into the new clubhouse. The question is whether, are we gonna be ready to do that by the time it
What's
would have to
moving days
happen?
is what you're asking for.
So, I mean, it may not be a quick a clean 50-50, but there's
Okay.
gonna be some squishy time in the middle, and I just don't know the answers
Okay.
to tell
It's
you.
fair for us to ask for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
Credit
fair
back
to
if it's
say,
unused.
if we didn't use it for the entire period, would we get a credit back?
Okay.
We can just ask those questions.
So that's just, I don't want to hold it up because it's in the so I guess, I don't know if anyone has any other what I plan to do with this one is, I think we as a committee need to decide whether we also support funding the other one. My understanding is we could, but I'm not sure
So just on that for a second, I spoke to Mr. Purple about that today. He specifically mentioned the $8,000 one as well, but he's not here. I'm not gonna speak for him, but acknowledge that this may be able to be covered now, and if that's the case, he may look at pulling the other one over to public safety as well.
which this committee would have to vote on, which
Correct.
I'm not ready to do tonight.
Correct.
So, hearing this, right, and knowing, I saw a lot of head nods that these things need to be connected, right? We're not paying for one and not the other, and we're paying for either 0 or 2. So, in the interest of getting some of these other items signed, should we pull this out, or should we make a conditional approval subject to kind of Mark working through?
Because the change order is already printed and here, and you can sign it tonight, I would make the conditional approval.
Well, who's signing the change order? It's Mark, right?
Mark signs,
So
But it would be tomorrow.
yeah.
and so I guess I'm asking a question, but does it really matter whether or not this committee votes on this particular change if Mark is signing the change order anyways? You know, in other words, if it's in the golf course side, Mark's signing off on it. And if it's in your committee side, you sign off on it. So if you're not gonna sign off on it, but Mark still signs the change order, isn't he still just accepting
Yeah,
it
but then if
for
he's
the
gonna
golf
flip
side?
it back to our budget,
But then you'd have to vote for it again, I guess. And so
But
the question here is
it's
whether
gonna-
the town ultimately is
Yeah.
gonna accept it. Because they accepted the first one. Is the town gonna accept this?
I mean, the
Second.
town doesn't really have a choice, we're already 15 days in, so I guess, I mean,
I
I
conditionally
kind of feel like
approve it.
our hands are tied here a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I'm confused. So I've got this, right?
Ignore that, go to the detailed context letter.
Okay, so this is not, only includes a few of these
That was
that
the
are on the
first,
letter.
yep, that
Okay,
was,
so throw this out.
yep,
Okay, so the whole change order 3 is here. This is, so
Yep.
it's now much,
so we're on
That's
38,
the recommendation letter.
okay, so it's
Separate.
much bigger than what was there. Okay.
yes.
There's a new front cover, and the reason why is because subsequent to them sending that out, they had a site meeting where they resolved the ledge. It's $42,000, so if we don't have to make CTA wait another month, so they made the decision to include it in change order 3, which meant that Jeff had to go back to the office and issue you a new letter and a new change order cover. That's why you have 2 sets.
Okay, so I guess I've
So we're in the
confused.
memo. We're in the memo.
Page 2 of the memo.
All right,
PCO 38, clubhouse trailer in storage. So, I don't know, does anyone have any questions on this?
We own it either way, right?
We as a
No,
town own it.
Town owns it.
Town
That's
owns
what I
it,
was
yeah.
saying, is you guys, the
Yeah.
town owns it either way. It's just a matter of what you guys specifically are gonna do with it.
And so what I'm probably gonna do, just for the committee's benefit, so we don't get confused when I move it, I'm not gonna move this one, because it's within Mark's authority to approve it under $5,000 without our committee's involvement, so I'm just gonna leave that one out and leave it to him and bond counsel and keep us out of it, to be honest.
But
Yes,
can he separate and pick out from change orders,
yes, that's
from where,
what we've been doing every month. Like, we've been having,
between the golf budget?
So
Ours.
if it's gonna move back,
So that's why I'm confused.
if anything's moved over,
yeah,
It's
we'll
on
have to
need
come
to bring
back
it
to
back
it.
to
So we
you
don't have the totals.
to get that
This is the
approval
old totals, but it's
Right.
wrong.
from this committee.
Transfer.
Okay,
Since he's not here, we can't.
Yep.
yeah. So is there any questions on 38? All right, 40 does not belong to us, even though it's a credit. Basically, they had drawn a gas line to the clubhouse, and there is no need for gas at the clubhouse. So, and then ledge, so PCO 42 for a total amount of 44,520. Jeff, when you walk through this one, is this in addition to the 10 that was already approved, or is this including the 10
Including the
that was
10.
already
This
approved?
Right, this includes the 10.
Okay.
So this, you guys saw, or maybe, I don't know if we came to you at that point,
It
but,
would have been within Mark and,
Yeah.
Mark and I approved 10 to
so you
get
guys approved
started.
it then. So there was a need to remove rock in excess, ledge rock, in excess of what we had an allowance for in the contract. We had 500 cubic yards of allowance, because when we did the borings, we found some ledge in this corner of the site. Unfortunately, they found a lot more than what we were expecting. That 500 grew quite a bit. I think it's over 800 now, 800 cubic yards. So we have to pay for the additional ledge. Now, fortunately, we wrote into the contract unit prices so that if for every cubic yard, you have to pay a certain amount of money, so that they can't come to us saying, well, this place down the street is gonna charge me, $60 a yard, and so I'm gonna pass that on to you. We have a price already in the contract for that.
Ledge removed?
For each
Additional.
additional unit of quantity. So each additional cubic yard, you gotta pay $30 or whatever it is. So it's just a math exercise, frankly, of determining how much ledge did they have to excavate, and how much does that add up to, and applying the unit factor. So in this case, it adds up to the 44.5. So at the end of the day, had we known all 800-plus cubic yards were there, we would have put it in the bid documents, and you would have paid the same price, basically, on bid day anyway. So I don't see this as really an issue. It's just a matter of, it is what the site was, and we've got to pay it.
So it's $30 a cubic.
I believe, I'm going to look it up, but I
That's
think
90,
it's
so that's 90,000 in total?
70. Okay, that's, Yellen's telling me it's 70.
So it's 70 in total?
Per cubic yard.
70, okay.
87.
Well, 70 times 300 is what, 210,000?
Excuse me?
It was 70 times 850 minus 250, because we had used 250 for boulder removal. That's another detail.
Yeah.
So it was,
636 yards
yeah.
was the
times
net,
70.
times 70,
Is what we're having to pay for.
correct.
But unit price was the same, wasn't it, for additional? It didn't go up. I think it was the same as the first 500 or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right, if we knew that much ledge was there,
Yeah,
We-
so
this
in the
is what we
contract,
pay.
just so that everybody's clear, in the construction bid documents, we said allowance of 500 at $70 per yard. So every site contractor bidding would have plugged those two numbers in, and they would have put that on their bid sheet in their price. So they're not gonna, maybe they could have discounted it, but they're pretty much gonna give us what we told them is there. And so now all we're doing is saying, it's more than that, and we're paying the additional premium for that additional quantity. The only other thing we could have done possibly would be to have not used the 250 yards for boulder removal, but it's the same thing. So, you'd pay to remove the boulders differently than you paid to move the,
I don't think
Ledge.
anybody's surprised Southborough's full of ledge. But do we think we're done now? Is there any more risk?
So we think we are done for what we know that's there, because they've excavated for utilities, and I'm looking at the picture, but they've excavated for utilities in this driveway. The foundation of the building is already in. There's now the question that we just discussed about whether or not we actually have the space to put the piers in for the canopies. So that's a question. We're gonna go back and ask them that. question, but from what we can tell, it's in. Would you agree with that? Yeah. So the site contractor has all of the information about utility lines, catch basin, structures, underground stuff, and they've already used their GPS to plot that information out and determine how much they need to go down in certain spots. Like, for instance, in one spot, there's a catch basin that's fairly deep, and they had to dig kind of a pit in the ledge to stick that catch basin in. Now, we did talk to the site contractor on Tuesday morning, and it was clear the extent of the ledge wouldn't have allowed us to move utilities around. For instance, in some projects where we might find ledge, the site contractor will say, well, you know, if you just move the structure 20 feet to the right, we'd avoid the ledge, and the sites can still work drainage-wise. It wasn't the original design, but it can still work. In this case, we didn't have that option. There was so much, it went so big that we had to have drainage structures in it someplace. So there wasn't an opportunity to change the design to avoid the ledge.
But the biggest risk factor, or at least one of them, was always ledge, right?
Right.
And so if somebody says, what was the cost overrun? It's $45,000. That's
Right.
what we paid for additional ledge removal.
Yep.
And that's it.
Can I ask a question? When I was on the site and I saw there's still ledge there,
So
Does that ledge need to be
there
removed
is
to
a
that
section of
parking lot area?
ledge, to avoid the extra cost, we worked the landscape architect to retain a portion of the ledge that we didn't ask them to remove. We could have paid for it, but, you know, we figured, this was at the time they had given us a different calculation before. We thought we would get the whole piece of ledge done for less than 20,000 total. But in this case, we're thinking, well, we'd save some money by not excavating this piece of ledge. It became part of the landscaping, and, you know, it's just a rock that's basically sticking out of the ground. Look fine. So that's gonna stay at this point. It's gonna get cleaned off, and it's gonna stay. But the rest of the ledge, there wasn't
okay,
anything we
so
could
what I
do done
saw
to the
then
rock.
is gonna stay
Yeah.
because there's
That
nothing that's
piece of
being built
ledge,
there.
that's the only piece that's gonna stay.
Okay.
That was between the two parking lots.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the one section.
Jeff, do we have a cap on how much extra at $70 a yard? Is there a cap on
No,
the extra?
no, I mean, it's just a matter of how much ledge we
Right.
run into.
All right, any questions on ledge? All right, does anyone want me to hold any of these, because they've got two varying votes? All right, then I'm gonna move that we accept PCO 04R1, PCO 29, PCO 32, and PCO 42. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Officer. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, that carries unanimously. Invoices for approval. So Mr. Lemieux was very quick with his delivery of his invoice again. So it's in front of you now. Feel no obligation to act on it, but in an effort to kind of have real-time information
I try, man.
available.
I really do.
I've never, you know, my clients don't beg me for invoices, but, you know, it
No.
makes it a lot easier to approve them
I
while
agree.
it's all fresh. So it's in front of you. Does anyone have any objections to taking a minute now, looking at it, and working through the approval of it?
No.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Lemieux? All right, I am going to move that we accept the invoice for a total of $21,053.75 for Vertex's services provided during the month of September. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Officer. Any discussion? Mr. Rooney?
At the end of the day, when we're all done, will we get a total of how many hours you spent on it, how many hours Paul spent on it, et cetera?
We can.
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting to know. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, ready for a vote? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Other vendor invoices, are there any that anyone would like held and separated? I'm going to separate out National Grid because I do not intend to vote. So I will move that we accept the invoices for Southborough Police Department, UTS, context in pare as presented in the Vertex letter. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. Barry. Any further conversation? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Does anyone want to deal with National Grid?
You're conflicted?
I do not plan to vote.
I got it.
Do you need, we need a motion to approve?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the, who is it? National Grid bill.
Good. Second.
Okay, that was seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? And I'm abstaining. CTA requisition number 4. Any commentary you want to add, John?
No, so we simplified the letter for everybody. So you've got the base contract amount and change orders to the public safety building that total 911,801.54. The
Say that
alternate
again?
911,080. Do you have this letter right here?
Look at the Vertex cover letter.
That one. Okay, keep going.
Okay. The alternate one, which is the community preservation funds, 30,400, and then the golf work, 37,655.47.
Are there any questions for Ms. Lemieux?
Yeah, so will you, first of all, will you update, will somebody update this one to reflect the actual change orders we approved tonight?
You have, there, it should be in your
I've
packet.
got the details,
it
but we
already-
decided we don't have an updated.
It already exists.
Okay, so it's actually in here?
It should be in there, yeah.
Now, looking at the actual
Mhm.
AIA, right? So if you go to change orders, they tie out perfectly, right? The 18,000. The CCDs, I don't know where to go back and get, I just didn't have time for this meeting to really go back and do what I usually do. So the 25,000, where do I find that?
The 25,000.
Yeah, look at
Well,
the,
that's-
So basically, the 20, under the due column,
no.
I'm sorry,
Look at the bottom of the AIA,
Yep.
the rec. You're gonna see the COs and the CCDs.
yep.
So the 25,007.16,
Yeah, you have to go through back of the rec to each item that's a
Okay.
CCD.
so we haven't approved all of those. Some of those may be in the CO3 we just did, right? No, none of them are?
CCDs
Are done without us.
are done without you and then brought back here to discuss. So like the ledge CCD.
So they're approved, they're
So
approved.
like the ledge CCD is an example. We issued a $10,000 CCD so that we could start the ledge. That's in this rec here somewhere. Now you've just approved the $44,000 change order for the ledge. That CCD goes away. So what will happen is if they build that ledge to date, that $10,000 now, once we get the line item that says ledge removal 44,000, there'll be a previously approved amount of 10. So it requires, CCDs are great to keep things moving, but it's a little bit of an accounting nightmare because then you have to make sure that anything you did under a CCD got moved.
To the CO
and counted
eventually.
To the
Okay.
CO.
And
So as far
Kathy,
as
the
COs
only,
approved as of tonight,
yeah, and the more complicated part is golf, CPC, and public safety are all in one number.
Well, I'm doing my best to pull them out.
well, they're
but-
not in the CO number here on this. They're out of this. This is all
Yeah, all the
public safety
paperwork,
here.
all the paperwork
Right.
with the contractor is
Right.
not,
Is
does
one-
not take into the
one.
So
town's.
this is what I'm trying to get to with all the talk. As far as change orders approved as of tonight through CO3, right, change order 3, if I added those up real quick, I think they're like 54 that we did
No,
tonight.
on this, it's only through 2.
Okay, but we approved,
Yeah, but they didn't,
If you're approved, it's not billed yet.
as far as what we've approved in this committee tonight,
Mhm.
we did approve CO3 tonight, that's what we just did.
puts me
Correct.
nowhere on the
Out a couple,
AIA.
we took out a couple of things, but we did approve most of what's in CO3, right? I understand it's not here yet.
Yep.
Right? But as far as what we've approved, what we're gonna see next time, we're gonna see, it looks like about $72,000
It'll be on
there,
here,
right?
yes.
I just wanna make sure my number's right. I added them real quick, so it looks like that's 54 with the ledge being the big one, right?
Yeah,
So it looks like through tonight, through CO3, we've got a net of about $72,000 of change orders.
yeah,
It
so
doesn't
you-
really-
Yeah,
I'm
one
just
and two,
trying
we
to
had,
keep close.
we had a credit-ish in the first
Yeah.
1 to 2. We had a big credit, right? So we got it
So we
somewhere in
had,
the
we're
20.
18 through CO2,
Total
so,
change orders would be about 72.
yes, your number.
Total through 3.
7, something like
so it's
that.
72, roughly. That's where we are right now, as far as what we've approved here through CO3.
That's
Okay,
true.
That's all I want to know.
Over half of that being the ledge.
Yeah, we've been really good with, for a lot of the ads, there've been offsets. The ledge is really the first one, you're like, ooh, you know, the ledge and the hose reels. You take away those two, and we've been pretty stable.
But don't those who do this all day long, like you, Mike, think that at this point, with $70,000 divided by 15 million, which I think is 0.5%, we're in really good shape, money-wise?
I'll tell you in May.
We've been coming up out of the ground, it's pretty good.
We're out of the
Yeah,
ground.
we got out of the, we got out of the ground with 44,000. Hose reels, what else, stuff like that is gonna come as the documents start to come
I
out.
don't disagree with you. The hardest part's coming out of the ground. But to both of your points, I'm not gonna dance until
Yeah.
later.
I don't want you to, I don't want you to dance till then either,
If you-
but
if
it
you
still
compare
looks
that-
like,
If you compare the change orders to what's been approved to date, it's like 3.5% or something like that.
Right.
So good is the answer.
We're doing good.
And we'll be somewhere in that range, 2 to 3, 4,
Hopefully, yeah.
right? I mean, are most of these jobs in this?
Historically, that's the good range to be
Yeah,
in, yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, so 0.5 now,
2% is
1.
$300,000. Where is $300,000?
That's like, he said, we'll tell you if
Who
you do
knows?
a good job. I don't
I
know
thought you
where-
just said
If
we
I-
are, I thought you just said we're at 300.
From what's been billed to date. Where we're
Not
at
total
we're
contract.
at 3.5% from what's been billed to
As
date.
far as, okay, so. you-
Don't worry about it,
you-
yeah,
I
it's-
heard you say something else,
Mhm.
okay.
All right, any other questions on the CTA requisition number 4? All right, so I will move that we accept CTA's requisition for 9/11/801/54. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. Berry. Any further conversation?
Is it 9/11 or
No, we only
9/79?
approved the public safety piece, so you gotta go to
Okay,
Vertex's cover letter.
okay.
And then just as an FYI, I coordinate with Ms. Gillespie on CPC. When I send you the packet, she gets a copy of this too, and she's been very good about getting her approvals in, and then Mark deals with the golf piece of this. And then they cut one check for the total that you were probably referring to, Mike. All right, motion's made, it's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Next item, project budget. It's in front of you. It was also in the packet. Any questions for Mr. Lemieux?
I've got one comment
Sure.
on it. So, a couple comments. Expenditures are through September, from Heidi's office. Third page for the PCOs, obviously, the ones that were approved tonight aren't reflected in the approved columns yet, need to move them. And I did not remove the $10,000 in ledge, because I wanted you to see it here historically, but I'm telling you, I've got a 0 and a X through it. That will disappear for the next iteration. Page 3. So if you look at.
Line 26.
If you look at this right here, line 26, for ledge, that's the $10,000 CCD that was issued. Now that the ledge PCO was approved, this line will just disappear. I'll probably put a note somewhere just so that I keep track of it, but I don't want you to think we approved and double dipped. It was 10,000 walking in here. Now that we're leaving, it's 44. I'll make that change for the next iteration.
Well, it's on here already.
Yeah, but it hasn't been
42.
moved.
Yeah,
it wasn't
It hasn't
approved
been
yet, though.
moved to its
42.
Wasn't
column.
moved. I didn't move it over to the right yet.
It's not hit its right
Not
column
in the
yet.
approved column
Yeah.
yet. Right. It's in the on deck circle.
All right, any questions for Mr. Lemieux?
Yes, sorry, Jason, I've got to keep doing this. So, one more time. Okay, I understand this includes public safety and golf, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so I did the math wrong a minute ago. The change orders 1 and 2 net out to a negative 18,000 for public safety, is that true or not?
Change orders 1 and 2 total $18,000.
Negative, a credit.
It's a credit for the
Yep.
public safety.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay,
Then there's
that's
that.
what you've got right here, it's in parentheses, right? So I did it the other way around. So, because what I forgot again, this includes golf too, on the AIA.
Because
Correct.
Okay, so I'm wrong with my number. 54 is what we approved tonight in change order 3. We're going into change order 3 with a negative 18, so this is like 36,000 net.
But they were carrying an additional 10 already for ledge under CCDs.
and carrying 51,000 for golf.
I'm not trying to do golf, I'm just trying to do public safety,
Oh, I got you.
okay?
Yes, you're right. To
This
your,
is,
to
okay,
your
so
point,
everybody's listen, this is not that hard. So 1 and 2 is a negative, is a credit of 18,000, right? For public safety, no golf in there,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's what you're seeing here,
Yep.
okay? Then tonight, we approved roughly 54,000, which was mostly ledge, for public safety.
sure.
So aren't we at a 36 net change orders through 3 for public safety?
For public safety, yes,
Because a minute ago, we said 72 because we're including the golf in there.
correct.
Okay,
So even better news.
even better, much better. So there's my contribution.
Thank you.
I think it's important, though, that clarification.
Well,
I mean, we came into this meeting with a credit. We're leaving.
Great spot.
Right, yeah.
Guys, it's,
Really?
trust me, with all the work we both see together, we're doing really well.
Yeah.
All right.
Had someone been a little bit more precise and
Oh,
accurate
you're
on the
mean.
hose reel,
Oh, man.
they'd even be doing a lot better, right?
No room to hide under the table.
They did find some credits.
I
though.
know they did, yeah. Balances
Um,
out.
Change the brick for you, right?
So, meeting schedule, there's likely, because of the desire of some, we will have an interim meeting to be determined. I'll let you know once context gives me notice of that. Then our next regularly scheduled meeting is Wednesday, November 14th. We're not meeting on the second Monday because that is when Veterans Day is observed. So we're on Wednesday, November 14th. We are at the fire department for that one, unless ZBA cancels. They're currently scheduled in here that night. Looking forward to 2019. What I have tentatively scheduled is the second Monday of every month.
Do we not have anything in December?
We do, sorry. It would be the second Monday, which is
10th?
10th.
the 10th.
Yep.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No, that was good.
And then, so looking forward to 2019, I have second Monday through June.
The second Monday in January, I think, is it Martin Luther King Day?
Should be the third Monday.
No, it's the 11th, is not Martin Luther. Oh, maybe it is.
Second
No,
Monday.
it's not showing up on my phone.
Second Monday is
So
the-
Martin Luther King Day is the 21st, I believe.
Oh, it is, you're correct, you're right.
So we would be meeting
Good, we're
on Monday, January 14th, Monday, February 11th, Monday, March 11th, Monday, April 8th, Monday, May 13th, and Monday, June 10th.
Then we're done.
So I think we're lucky, then
There'll
hopefully,
be one in
Wait,
July.
set the
'cause
ribbon
There's
cutting?
always a closeout.
yeah,
Is that the ribbon cutting date?
I know it's a little further up, I just wanted to, that's my intention. We can obviously revisit it as we get a little closer if there's some severe conflicts along the way. We clearly will not be able to do site tours at 5:30 going forward. So I guess what I would ask all of you is if you think there's an important part of the project that we should just take a quick walk around, we'll schedule maybe a morning, for those that are interested sort of thing.
The next time it will be great for you to see it is when there's a roof on it and we start building walls, so that you can start to get a feel for the spaces inside. Until then, it's gonna look a lot like what you see right there,
Perfect.
so.
We're just going to defer to your judgment. And I think, I know Southborough Access Media was down there last week, so there is a video, if it hasn't been published already, that will be coming, thanks to all that narrated. I haven't seen it yet, but heard it's well done.
She'll be back in November.
Perfect. So I think that will also have that opportunity, is there will be a video camera going through there every once in a while for the public's benefit. Anything else anyone wants to talk about tonight? All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor? Mr. Rooney? All right. Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.